All right, guys, we want to personally welcome you out today to the I Am Salt Lake podcast. If this is your first time listening to us, first of all, welcome. Thank you for downloading the podcast and checking it out. You're probably wondering, what is this podcast all about? What am I about to get myself into? Well, this podcast is all about showcasing awesome people right here in Salt Lake City. We talk to musicians, we talk to authors, we talk to breweries, distilleries, business owners, really anyone that might have a cool story to share. So we want to welcome you out today to episode 358. My name is Chris.
And my name's Christina.
We're recording today out of our brand new podcast studio located in the back of Empire Merchandise, right in downtown Salt Lake City. I believe the address here is 680 South State Street. You're going to want to stop on by and check Empire out. Not only do they have an amazing selection of vape juice and vape accessories, but this is where you can actually buy your very own I Am Salt Lake podcast t-shirt. So stop on by, check it out. At the time of this recording, we actually just restocked with stickers as well. Those are free. Stop on by and grab yourself an I Am Salt Lake sticker and slap it on the back of your car and show some pride for the podcast.
I'm so excited for this. Today we got to talk to Shae Petersen. He's also known as SRIL. We get to find out what got Shae interested in graffiti, street art, and eventually painting murals. This is such a good conversation with one of the best artists here in Salt Lake City, so we're going to be playing that in just a minute.
One thing keep in mind with this conversation, we actually recorded this interview with Shae before all of the murals here in Salt Lake City got vandalized, spray painted on, tagged, whatever you want to think happened. Well, I mean, I know what happened. I saw the pictures. Very upsetting.
Yeah.
Quite a drag here for the murals here in Salt Lake City. So we did this interview with Shae before that happened. Otherwise, we would have brought that up in the conversation. Also, we want to thank our amazing sponsor for this episode, Five Wives Vodka. Make sure to ask for Five Wives Vodka by name next time you head on over to your local bar. And we're going to be telling you more about them a little bit later on in the podcast.
And don't forget, you can always go over and visit our website at iamsaltlake.com. That's where you can get lost digging through the entire back catalog of all of our episodes. Also, a lot of people don't realize we have an awesome events calendar on the website, so you can always go there and find out what's going on. Again, the website is iamsaltlake.com. Go check it out and bookmark it.
All right, guys, here's that conversation with Shae Petersen when he came and sat down with us to share his story. Thank you so much for listening. Enjoy. I like to ask people, what did your childhood smell like?
I mean, I think the earliest smell I could remember would be like race cars, like going to like RMR or Bonneville, smelling like race cars and burnt tires and stuff like that. So
you went to a lot of like race cars as a young kid, huh?
I don't know how old I was. I mean, we used to go to like sand dunes and things like that. So I was around like motorsports in some fashion. So those were definitely some of my earliest memories that have like a scent attached to it for sure.
Did you grow up here in Utah?
Mm-hmm, I did. Yeah. I kind of lived all over. Like I lived in Magna, I lived in Sandy, I lived in Glendale. I've lived all over the place. So.
Well, I guess you've left for a little bit. Like you went down to Vegas here recently and kind of travel around with the art. So it's not like you've only been exposed to Utah.
Yeah. When I was 17, I actually dropped out of high school and got a job offer in Philadelphia. So I moved by myself to Philadelphia when I was 17. And I lived there for like a year by myself and then moved back to Utah. And then maybe it was like 2 years ago, I bought a house in Vegas. I moved to Vegas. Was there for like a year and a half. I think that's like the rule. I'm allowed to stay away for like a year and a half, and then I came back. So,
but something always pulls you back to Utah, I guess.
Yeah. Yep. What keeps bringing you back?
This one, I unfortunately got a divorce, and I have custody of my son. And being that I travel so much, I needed like family support and to help out with my son while I'm on the road. So I kind of was forced to come back this time, kicking and screaming. But it's worked out. I'm not upset. Yeah.
Now, in Philadelphia, was that anything to do with your art, or was that something else that you were doing out there?
Kinda. So I started out when I was in like probably junior high. I taught myself how to program, and I taught myself how to design. So I got like early bootleg copies of Photoshop and would teach myself how to design. So my first job in Philadelphia was a web development / design job. So it did have some creative aspect to it. I was doing some design work, but yeah, I did that for quite some time. Even when I moved back to Utah, like I had a career in design. I'd worked my way up the corporate ladder and I kind of got sick of it and wanted to focus more on painting. And so I did that, but I do have like 15 years of experience designing and using Photoshop and Illustrator and things like that. So it's helped my art, but yeah, I mean, I don't do it anymore.
Yeah, well, gosh, you guys have a connection. She's a user UX designer.
At the moment, I'm a UX designer, but we all started there, right? Doing Photoshop and web design, and
so I've had a couple of UX roles as well. It's good fun.
It's actually really fun. It's a totally different type of fun. It's a different type of creative outlet for sure. But were you painting the whole time? Like, have you been painting since you were a kid?
Kind of on and off, right? Like I started the first wall I painted. I was like 11 years old. So I found some spray paint or something and painted some poor neighbor's fence.
You get in trouble for that, I'm sure.
I didn't get caught.
See, that's if you don't get caught, you're fine.
Yeah. The only times I've gotten in trouble, I've been arrested. I went to jail, spent 3 days in jail for painting an abandoned building. And they gave me no bail. And they tried to charge me with a felony.
Here in Salt Lake City area.
After it was all said and done, I paid the restitution to have the building painted over. The building didn't even exist anymore. They had demolished it because it was due to be demolished. So the whole thing was a joke.
So you still had to pay?
For the
demolished building.
Yeah, I'm sure the city just kept the money.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So that was fun. And then another time when I was like 13 or 14, there's Milo Sport, which is, I lived in that area. And I went in there and asked them for permission to paint this wall in the back of their building. And they were like, yeah, sure, no problem. Cops show up. And they're like, hey, Milo Sport doesn't have permission to give you permission. Like, it's not their building to give you permission to paint. And
wait, the cops showed up to so who called the cops?
Someone, there's like that Shivers right there.
Yeah.
The little drive-through. So someone must have drove through there, saw us painting and called the cops. So the cops showed up and I was like, oh, it's fine. We have permission. Go ask the Milo Sport guys. Well, the Milo Sport guys found out they didn't own the building and they didn't have permission. So they're like, no, we didn't give you permission.
Oh.
So, that wasn't minimal. I mean, I was like a kid, so they didn't, I think I went to like juvenile, whatever the kiddie jail is. No big deal. So yeah, I mean, there's some smack of the hand for what I've done to this point, but the last, I don't know, however many years I've kept my nose clean, I guess.
Yeah, but you've been painting, I mean, murals for businesses and for companies, some huge murals here in Salt Lake. I mean, but all over the United States you've done.
Yeah, I travel all over. I mean, I have murals as far as Miami, like, right now, I probably have 5 or 6 in LA. I've got them in Denver. I mean, wherever I can go. I was supposed to go to Memphis and do an event out there. And I'm kind of a diva at this point. Like, so I got the photos of the wall that I was supposed to paint in Memphis, and it was like this run-down, terrible wall. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to go to Memphis to paint that wall. Like, I've got nicer walls here to paint. So I kind of, I didn't go.
Well, I mean, you're putting your name on it. You're putting your stamp on something.
So did you go to art school at all, or so all self-taught? Yeah,
I have no training whatsoever. It's completely self-taught. I mean, it's kind of an obsession, right? Like, so even when I was in the design field, like I was in a position where I would hire other designers. And I had this tendency of hiring designers that weren't out of school. They were self-taught. And my belief is that somebody that teaches themselves is far more motivated to learn than someone who has to go to school. Because if you're going to school, you're like, okay, I'm going to get a job doing this. And you're kind of just going through the motions. Whereas someone who is self-taught is doing that on the weekends. They're doing it on the evenings. They're avoiding, hanging out with friends and losing out on opportunities to be social, to learn this thing. So for me, I'm self-taught in art, the same as I'm self-taught in design and programming, but there's a tremendous amount of passion that goes into being self-taught, and the amount of, I guess, work, the amount of hours that you spend to learn the craft is just the same, if not more, as someone who was, traditionally taught or taught through schooling. So
I'm totally with you. I think especially in the design field or the art field and even in the programming field, like the most impressive people that I know did not go to school for it.
Yeah.
Because they genuinely do it because they love it and they just want to continue to grow.
Absolutely.
It's all about the portfolio of what the art that you have. When did you figure out, gosh, I can actually make some money doing this and paint big murals
instead of paying
people.
Money?
Exactly.
Yeah,
and not get in trouble doing it.
Yeah.
it happened really organic. Like I didn't seek out to do it. I mean, the one thing that I think that I did consciously that was probably to my benefit is the branding, right? Like I didn't sign my murals with this chicken scratch or sign it in something that wasn't legible. I put a stamp on the damn wall. Like you can't miss it. You know, this is my brand. This is me. That was probably one thing that set me apart. And, you know, as soon as that kind of started to build, you know, some sort of following, then the rest kind of followed. I mean,
Sure.
It was never intentional. It was never like, hey, I could do this and make some money. I mean, because like you said, like I used to pay. Like I had to like, hey, can I paint your wall? And that was out of my pocket, all the paint, all the supplies, materials. So that's how it started. You know, me getting paid to paint walls, it kind of went to a point where I was like, look, I have half a dozen people asking me to paint their walls. I'm going to start charging. Well, then it was like, okay, well, I still have half a dozen. I'm going to start charging more. And, you know, I've kind of weeded out the stuff that I don't want to do just based on pricing. And it happened completely organic. It was never really something I thought was even possible, let alone something I intended to do.
It's cool though. I mean, you've done some of the biggest pieces that I've ever seen.
Yeah, just with spray paint.
What,
right?
I mean, like how long, one piece that I saw a lot of, I used to work down at one of the tile stores down there in 300 West.
I already know exactly what you're talking
Exactly.
about.
You know which one. And a lot of listeners, I'm sure, have seen that one. That one's been up for a couple of years now, I think.
2015. So yeah, 3 years.
So let's use that business, for example. So they reached out to you and did they tell you what they wanted you to paint on there?
Not at all. No, I had complete creative freedom on that wall. So that wall is interesting. Like a lot of people think I got paid a ton of money for it. A lot of people think that like, you know, it was like some huge good gig for me.
Sure.
I was working full time at the point, like when they contacted me. Like I had a full-time job. I got bills to pay.
Not a painting job.
No.
Regular...
I was still doing, I was doing web development and design, UX actually. So, and they reached out to me and they were like, hey, we've got this wall. We've got a graffiti problem. You can essentially paint whatever you want. I'm like, okay, great. Give me some money towards the paint because it's 100 feet by like 22 feet. And at that time,
it's huge.
Yeah, it's a massive wall, right?
Yeah.
So at that time, I was like, well, that's the largest wall I've ever done. Like, I need to at least get some paint costs. So I charged them $1,200 for paint. I ended up spending about $3,600 in paint. So
Wow.
I took my full-time job and I went part-time solely to paint this wall. So I worked like 2 days a week at my job to get a paycheck. And the rest of the time I was there painting this wall. And I can't remember exactly. I mean, it's been 3 years, so I can't remember exactly how many weeks it took me. I think it was 3 weeks. But I worked like 8 to 10 hour days on this wall, 4 days a week till it was done. So my only compensation was, you know, the result of it. Like I lost money. Not only did I lose money in the actual physical cost of paint, but I lost money because I went part-time and lost out on, you know, that income. So it was a huge risk to just paint that wall, you know? But I mean, it's paid off.
Sure. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people have contacted you because of
It's
that.
gigantic billboard. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
that's
then-
true. Can I ask an ignorant question? Because I really don't know anything about street art or, you know, mural art. How do you prevent more graffiti problems on top of your art? Is there like an unspoken rule that you just don't do that, or?
That's not an ignorant question. It's a great question. So prior to that wall, I can't even remember when this happened. That wall was untouched. Every single one of my murals have been untouched because I came from a graffiti background. The kids knew me. They knew of me. Okay. I was in, you know, different graffiti crews that had big names and things like that. Well, I kind of had a falling out with like the local graffiti scene. They don't necessarily like me anymore because now they see me as just this art guy that drives around a fancy car and it seems unattainable to them. Well, that wall has been messed with and I had to go back and fix it. Now I'm covering every mural, well, you know, the ones that make sense financially with an anti-graffiti coating. And it's basically in a thick epoxy coating that paint will no longer stick to. So, you know, any of these new murals that you see me do, if someone goes and spray paints over the top of them, it can literally be hosed off. It'll wash off with the rain.
That's so cool.
It's extremely expensive.
Yeah.
But, you know, I mean, the business owners that are paying me to do it, or even myself, if I'm doing a mural, like I want it to be protected. So, but yeah, there was an unwritten rule. Like in graffiti, there's a tag and then there's a throw up, which is like a bubble letter type graffiti, right? And then there's a piece, which is more of like an ornate, fancy lettering. And then there's a mural. So the rule is, you know, throw up goes over a tag, piece goes over a throw up, a mural can go over a piece, and that's it. Well,
Paper, rock, scissors.
Basically, right. It's like there's a hierarchy there, and there's a rule and there's a law. And I mean, even with my mural being touched, there was some other I guess big head, big wig type people in Salt Lake that vouched for my mural to be destroyed. So there's some politics going on there.
So if somebody's out to get you, then they want to paint over it.
Yeah, it was a personal vendetta.
It's kind of like a go to hell or F you or something like that, right?
Yep. And the thing is I know exactly who did it. I know the kid's graffiti name. I know his first and last name. I know where his parents live. I know so much about this kid, and I won't tell anybody. I'm just going to keep it and hold it to myself because, negativity is just going to get more negativity. If he destroyed the wall or messed with it, I fixed it, we move on. I mean, there's no sense in really taking it further or getting upset or trying to retaliate. I mean,
I think you're only helping yourself by taking that stance because you're moving on and you're moving towards your future instead of holding yourself back into, anger and you can get really stuck in the negativity.
That's really bad. Really bad. I mean, my hope is that the kid will be like, okay, he knows I did it. He's not going to do anything because, the kid knows he fucked up. He shouldn't have done that. I made a post when that wall was destroyed. It had 850 shares on my personal page.
Oh, wow.
That's insane. I've never had anything like that. So there was at least 850 people that were furious that this kid messed with the wall. Hopefully, he kind of learned something from it and we all move on from it. I mean, it kind of is what it is at this point. So.
I wouldn't want to mess with that wall. Now, did you say how many hours that took? You mentioned 4 days a week and this. I'm just curious how many, rough estimate.
I would assume at least 60 hours, but I don't know. I mean, some of the days I was there, it was raining and I would just sit in my car and wait it out. Some of the days it was blistering, I thought I was going to get heat stroke. So, I mean, some days I'd paint for 4 hours and some days I'd paint for 10 and I don't really know exactly.
Sure.
I mean, I got to do a better job at, keeping track of, people ask the same questions on how many cans did it take? How many hours was that? I don't really pay attention. I just kind of do it, So
But if you spend all your time paying attention to those details, how are you're losing all that energy that you could be putting towards the piece.
Yep. That's the same thing when people are like, hey, do you do time lapse or do you have video? I don't have time to set up a time lapse or I don't have the capacity to be thinking about, oh, this is a cool shot. Also, I've got to paint this section. You know what I mean? So it's tough to kind of document it as well as I probably should as just a solo person, but it'll kind of develop, I think.
And you mentioned at that time you were working another job, but now this is all you're doing is the mural.
Yeah. Painting. So shortly after that, I left that job anyways, and I went and worked with a company as a UX person.
It's a great job. I don't blame you.
It's so much fun. I love it. So then I moved to Vegas, and Vegas to me was vacation. When I would hit the road or go do a mural in some other state or city, I would come home to Vegas and I felt like I was on vacation, right? I had a house with a pool. It was peaceful. It was quiet. And then I'd hit the road again. So I kind of got off track there, but yeah, that's when I started doing this stuff full time. It's when I was in Vegas, I was like, you know what? No longer do I have to go do a 9 to 5. I kind of transitioned out of that role that I was working with the UX company. They were based in Salt Lake, but they let me move to Vegas and I was kind of like a contractor. And then things sort of went south with that company. And I was like, you know what? I'm doing art full time.
Very cool.
Yeah. I've been extremely fortunate. I mean, I don't really know how I've done it, but I'm not going to complain about it.
We need to actually take a quick break here to play a message from our sponsors. But then when we come back, I want to talk about your vodka, obviously, and more of your murals. We got some questions here from our Facebook group. So hang tight. We'll be right back. All right. It's that time of the podcast where we take a couple of minutes, tell you about our amazing sponsor, Five Wives Vodka. All year long, we've been telling you about this amazing, delicious local vodka, Five Wives Vodka. They are great people, and many thanks to them for sponsoring this podcast. So the next time you head on over to the state liquor store, the next time you head on over to your bar and you're asked for Five Wives Vodka, not only are you getting a delicious vodka, but you are supporting I Am Salt Lake podcast. So it's a win-win all the way around, right? They actually have 3 different flavors that Christina and I are going to tell you about right now. They have the original. This is the one that's made from Utah mountain spring water. It's 100% distilled corn spirit, and it's gluten-free for those of you that are keeping score at home. The spring is hidden in beautiful Ogden Canyon. It's inaccessible by vehicle, so they're actually hiking this water out 5 gallons at a time.
And I bet you guys didn't know that I have one of these bottles on my shelf at all times.
She's not kidding.
It is a household staple. But they also make a delicious flavor. Five Wives Sinful is a flavored vodka with a delicious cinnamon taste. And it's not like other cinnamon products that give you a cinnamon candy taste. Sinful is like a morning cinnamon roll, and it only has 76 calories per ounce.
There's also the Five Wives Heavenly. This is another one of their flavored vodkas, but this one has a delicious vanilla taste. Heavenly's rich, buttery vanilla flavor, it comes through without coating your taste buds with sugar, and this results in more vanilla and less calories. They have a website, fivewivesvodka.com. This is where you can find out more information about it, but just head on over to the state liquor store, pick up a bottle for your neighbor. This is going to make a great holiday gift for that special someone that you don't know what to get for them. Pick up a bottle of Five Wives vodka.
And don't show up at a holiday party without one.
Exactly. And of course, as always, many thanks to Five Wives Vodka for sponsoring this episode of the podcast. We have a Facebook group, which I invite everybody to join, the I Am Salt Lake community. And we mentioned that we're going to have you on the show. Everybody was excited. I mean, obviously, you've made some good marks here in Salt Lake City. There's a few questions here that I thought was kind of interesting. So one of our listeners, Nicole, she asked, when painting such a large scale, is it more math than freestyle?
No, it's not. People have this tendency to think that large scale stuff is more difficult because when you're up close, how do you see the big picture? But that's what makes it easy, right? Like when you're drawing, let's say you're drawing someone's face. If you draw and you're drawing their nose and in your brain, you're like, this is a nose, you'll mess it up because you'll draw what you think you see and not what you actually see. So the benefit of painting large scale stuff is you're up so close to it that you're painting shapes. And you're not fighting yourself and saying, hey, this is what a nose should look like. You're painting shapes you see, and that's it. So painting that close and such a large scale is actually beneficial, right? Like,
so it's easier, you think, almost to do it to a degree.
In a sense, I mean, depending on what you're painting, right? Like if I'm painting like something that's some long 40-foot long straight line, that's difficult, right? Like, because you have to be continuous and smooth and straight. But if I'm painting a nose, as a good example, I'm not painting a nose when I'm up there. I'm just painting shapes. So
do you actually draw it out first and then paint over it? I mean, how do you even know what shapes or what size? These are really dumb questions, but I've never done
dumb questions at all.
Okay, I've just never done anything
to learn
like that.
So there's a bunch of different techniques I use. Depending on what it is, like you can use a projector. You know, a lot of people do it. Sometimes I do it. All my public stuff that you see was not projected. You can use a grid. You can use like this page flipping technique where you basically close one eye and flip the image in front of you and kind of like mark references on the wall, like a little imperfection or a bump or something like that. And then just kind of build your perimeter outline. Or you can fully just freehand it, which, you know, sometimes you don't have the opportunity to use a projector or you don't have the opportunity to stand back and do the page flip thing. So you have to have like an arsenal of tools to get it done. There is no like one way I do it. I mean, it really just depends on the space and, you know, the light or, you know, can I take a step back or not? It really just depends.
Because the last piece you did was like an apartment building or something like that, or what was it? Was that an apartment, I think? Yeah,
it's an apartment complex that they just built. And then the mural is part of, I think, a parking structure.
Yeah.
But they architected that building to have a mural on it. So it's just really cool. Like, it wasn't just like, hey, there's some blank spot on our wall. Let's get a guy to paint it. They actually designed it and framed it in with brick and left it to where this is where a mural is going to go and they're going to light it and everything. So it was a really cool project.
I mean, you had to use like a scissor lift for that and everything.
Not even a scissor lift. That was a boom lift.
A boom lift.
Yeah, it was an 85-foot tall boom lift because that mural started 15 feet off the ground and it was 60 feet tall. So, I mean, a normal scissor lift, there's no way.
Yeah.
Are you afraid of heights?
No.
I was going to say, let's hope he's not afraid of heights.
Well, the first like 5 minutes I was up there, it was pretty nerve-wracking on two fronts. One, you're really high up in the air. And two, when you're right up there, you realize the scale of it. And you start to have self-doubt, right? Like, why did I agree to do this? Like, how am I going to pull this off? I can't believe I got myself in this situation. And then like 15 minutes later, you're like, oh yeah, I've got this. I've done this before, you know, and it happens a lot. Like a lot of times when I have these big jobs, I freak out. I'm like, there's no way I'm going to be able to do it. And then I start painting and I'm like, oh yeah, I've done this before. Like stop, So there's the amount of self-doubt on each job, especially large scale ones, is kind of funny at this point. Like, I've been there, done that.
It's so interesting because, like, I mean, Chris and I constantly talk about imposter syndrome. And it seems to me the most talented people like you are the people who actually kind of experience it the most. Don't you, like, do you think it's because you hold yourself to such a high standard that it kind of cripples you in the beginning?
Probably. I mean, I don't really. So first, I don't necessarily believe in talent, right? Like, I'm a huge, like, advocate of just busting your ass, like being a hard worker. Because, like, for me, like, when I first started painting portraits, I was terrible at it. It didn't just start and I could do it. It took a lot of time. So I don't necessarily think there's an inherent talent there. But I agree with you. Like, yeah, there's a lot of self-doubt. And I've seen that. Well, I mean, I painted with some of the best aerosol artists in the world. And one of the best artists, like, the guy was just like, this is nothing. It's no big deal. Like, I don't care. I have no training, no background. So that guy, maybe a unique instance there. But yeah, I think typically like that, like you said, the imposter syndrome is pretty common. Like, people are like, why am I here? How did, this is above me or something like that. I see it all the time. For me, like I said, the biggest thing is I don't think I'm talented. I think I just have to work hard. So, like, if my preparation isn't what it should be, which preparation to me is everything, like knowing what I'm getting myself into, making sure I've got my colors mapped out, making sure I have an idea of what I'm doing. And the better I prepare, the more likely I'm going to be successful. So I'll doubt my preparation. I could have done this better or I should have done this differently. Yeah.
That's so interesting because do you think that a lot of people, I know I'm one of those people, but do you find a lot of people assume that you are the kind of person who can just show up somewhere with a bag full of random cans and then just make this incredible piece?
Yeah.
With like zero planning, zero thought. Yep. It's just like a natural ability.
So I just had this job. Well, so I've kind of like, I haven't taken any break for like the last 6 months. So I had this trip planned and I went to Maryland with some friends to watch some cars. And that was like the first time I've taken a break since May. Like, I'm talking weekends, evenings, like I've just been slammed. Well, I had this job I was supposed to do and I couldn't come up with an idea. I just couldn't come up with anything. I knew what I wanted to do was greater than kind of what I had been designing. So I was like, look, this isn't working out. They actually fired me from the job. They fired me from the job because I couldn't come up with a design in time. And they expected me to just show up at the date we mapped out. Like, hey, I'm free this day. So, okay, come paint. And, the expectation is you're supposed to perform no matter what. And that's not always the case,
Being an artist kind of sucks sometimes. Sometimes
it does.
For that reason.
There's another question here. I don't want to pass it up here from Jaylyn. She asked in our Facebook group. This one's kind of a little bit longer, so I'm going to just read it. She said, I'm so interested in street art right now. I'd like to know if SLC has any regulars and how to find out about their style, etc. And then does he have a favorite graffiti artist? And then your thoughts on guerrilla street art versus commissioned street art. So I know that's a lot of stuff thrown out, and I don't even know. I'm not even 100% sure what she means by it all, but maybe you do. And if not, I
wouldn't say,
so how do you find out about their style? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question.
Yeah. Drive by and look at it.
Yeah, look at it. It's subjective, right? So.
And then do you have a favorite graffiti artist?
I've got a ton of graffiti artists. The way I look at it, a graffiti artist, I'm not a graffiti artist. Like, I'm well past that. Like, I don't do anything illegal, and therefore I feel like it's kind of an insult to call myself a graffiti artist.
Sure.
But I do have a favorite graffiti artist. I've a bunch of them. I wouldn't have one specifically, but there's a guy, Bacon, based out of Canada, who does some of like the coolest letters I've seen, like kind of like a calligraphy, graffiti style, which they're immaculate. The guy should be just designing fonts. I've got the guy I was telling you about earlier that I painted with, that just everything is so easy for him. His name is Smug, and he's based in Scotland. And then he does some of the best photorealism you'll ever see. I've got a ton of favorite artists. Look at my Instagram and look at who I'm following, and you'll find, a ton of amazing artists.
What is your Instagram?
It's SRIL Art, and it's SRILART.
And that actually is a good opening. I didn't even ask you. I meant to ask you in the beginning, meaning behind your name. Is there any meaning?
There is, but it's interesting. Like, a lot of the same as when I do a painting, I don't always know what it means until after. And the same with my name. Like, initially when I did the name, I was like, I came up with this name, and with graffiti, you kind of shorten things. So it means surreal. It's pronounced SRIL, but it's just SRIL. But at the time, it was kind of to represent what I was painting. But now I realize in hindsight, like, it represents me as a person. It represents my career as an artist because everything has been surreal, right? Like, I've got to this point where, I mean, we're even having this conversation, like, that anyone even cares is surreal. So that is the meaning. I mean, what I do as an artist, the fact that I can do this as an artist, the fact that I'm able to even be an artist is surreal.
Very cool. And you've kind of created a brand around this whole thing. And actually, I want to lead that into the vodka that you've recently came out with.
And I have to be honest, when Chris walked in and said that you brought us one of your vodka cans, you weren't in the room yet, but I fangirl screamed.
I was showing it.
So
I was showing her some pictures, I think, just last night.
Yeah,
I was
just last night.
Look, he made it like an aerosol can.
And I was just freaking out because obviously whenever I see someone be so creative with, you know, like taking what you do, and I heard you created vodka. We'd been talking about it for a while, but like what you did with it is so cool.
Thank you.
It's just the neatest.
Talk about how did this whole idea come about even to come out with vodka? I mean, a mural artist coming out with vodka.
Right. So it's kind of a funny story. Without throwing any other people or companies under the bus, there was a local vodka company that went and put one of their bottles in front of my murals. And I reached out to them and I was like, hey, we should collaborate. Let me do a label. And they ghosted me. So I was like, you know what? Fuck it. I'll make my own vodka. So I reached out to Ethan Miller, who I think at the time he was working with Dented Brick. And I was like, hey, where do I go? What do I do? And he got me in touch with the guys at Distillery 36. And this was like almost a year ago. We just started the process. So I designed the bottle with a pencil sketch. I had the lids custom made here in Utah. So it's an injection molded piece of plastic that was made from a 3D model to represent a spray can. We spent like 3 or 4 months sourcing a stock bottle that looked like a spray can that matched my design. I designed the labels myself, you know, and the guys at Distillery 36 are masterminds with the distillation process. And we kind of worked back and forth and found, you know, a formula that we liked. And, you know, the end result is hopefully a product that looks as good as it tastes.
Which I'm going to go ahead and vouch for.
Yeah. I was going to say, what do you think there, Chris? You were
disclaimer, listeners, I've had a couple of shots of this since so good. Oh my gosh.
Now, it hasn't been out very long, right?
So technically it's not really out yet. Like you can only buy it at the distillery right now, but we did our launch party at the complex. People are able to, you know, taste it then. Yeah. But the process on getting it into the liquor stores is
it a pain in the ass? I
don't think it is. I mean, I think all things considered, like they do a really good job. You know, like the DABC does a really good job. You know, it's just, it's time consuming.
What about, I wonder how hard would it be to get in bars and stuff like that?
It's the same process.
Same process.
Like once you pass the DABC, you can kind of get anywhere?
No, actually, so right now we could be in bars. But what happens is the bar owners or the bar, you know, whoever's stocking their bar has to go to the distillery and purchase. And that to them is a pain in the ass. Because what they can do now with the DABC is just put in an order and someone can go pick it up. So until it's in the DABC, it's going to be harder for us to be in bars, but we could totally be in bars. I mean, we're going to be in Button Down. Well, we're supposed to be in Button Down last weekend, but we could be there this weekend. So yeah, I mean, and then it's just a matter of relationships, right? Like getting people to try it, you know, letting them see how good it is, and then wanting them to put it in their establishment, whether it's a bar or a restaurant. So it's doable. I mean, it's the next step.
What's the response has been pretty good with it?
So it's tough, right? Like nobody's going to tell me they hate it, but the number one feedback, like at our launch party that I did, I sat there and kind of listened to people talk about it without knowing I was listening, right? So like I was standing at the bar and just kind of like earshotting other people's conversations. The response is 100% positive. I mean, it's the smoothest vodka I've ever had. It's the best vodka I've ever had. Like those are the two common things I've heard repeated. So I mean, the Distillery 36 guys did a really good job. Like their rum is amazing. Like,
the spiced rum. I mean,
their rum is so good.
That.
One of my favorite rums I've ever had, if not my favorite. So we use the same base product. This is a sugarcane vodka, and no one really is doing that. But their rum and this vodka kind of starts at the same place, right? So, I mean, I was confident that they could pull it off, and I think they did. You know, I mean, I don't know as much about that process as they do, obviously. I mean, I kind of tap them because they're the professionals, but I'm extremely happy with what they produced.
hopefully eventually it will be in liquor stores so people can
and like this is worth
out.
it just to have the bottle in your house.
Yeah.
It is such a cool bottle.
So the thing that's cool about the bottles, and this was my plan, was not only am I just going to try to attach my brand to a bottle of vodka, but it's a place for me to, release new art. So this first label will be a limited edition label. Like there was a pre-sale and we signed and numbered every single bottle that people ordered. So that was kind of cool. And then what I can do is actually introduce new designs and new colors and new labels and everything else. So they become like the same as a print, but it's consumable. So
that's really cool.
Do you plan on doing other liquors, or is this just kind of a one-time fun thing to do?
It's definitely not like a one-time thing. It's not like a novelty. It's not like I just, did a small run. Like this is for real. I've already started talking about distribution in Florida and in Vegas and California. So I want this to be a national thing, not just like a local brand. So yeah, I don't know. I don't have any plans on doing other types of liquor. Potentially we'll do like flavored vodka. But the challenge is like there's no cut corners. So like if we do like watermelon flavored, for example, I'm not going to go get like some oil drip drop thing to put in it. Like we're going to make it out of watermelons. And right now, like the size of the distillery, like there's just not capacity to expand that like that. So we'll kind of see where it goes. I mean, right now, just getting it into the hands of people that want it is enough of a challenge because we're just like, it's flying off the shelves right now. So.
I could imagine. I mean, the packaging alone, you got to get. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's almost like a collector bottle. Plus, then you got some art of yours on there. Mm-hmm. And I'll try to get a picture of this bottle at iamsaltlake.com with this episode, so you can go check it out. If not, on your own website too, which you have an amazing website, by the way. Which I would imagine with all your UX experience, you probably did your own website too, right?
Yeah,
and all of that.
Thank you.
Is there a medium that you would like to try? Like, obviously you do with aerosol. I would imagine you pencil and paintbrush too. I mean,
not really. I mean, I used to draw a lot with pencil and I stopped because I can't draw what I can paint. It's just it's a different way of doing things. I mean, I can layer and blend with spray paint better than any medium I've ever tried. I mean, acrylic is terrible to blend with compared to spray paint. Oil is way time consuming compared to spray paint. Pencils, it's just, I mean, honestly for me, like spray paint, once you figure it out, is far superior to everything else. I mean, the blending ability of a spray can is inherent, right? Like cans, they blend. It's speckles that turn into another color. So, I don't have to sit there and work it and smudge it or do anything like that. I just layer it.
Can control. I don't know how you do that, man. Like I've spray painted with a spray paint can before and it just goes everywhere.
You have to have amazing control.
Yeah.
It seems like.
And that takes years to develop. Like I'm still getting better at it. I mean, it's just never ending. But once you develop at least a basic understanding of the cans and how they work and control of them, I mean, I think it's a pretty, legit medium.
Is that something you think someone's born with, or do you think you can actually learn how to do it? I mean, any kind of art, I guess, really.
I mean, I think there's some level of talent, right? Like look at it from this perspective. I can look at a human face or a photo of a face and I can break down the colors that are there. That's hard to learn. I mean, that's like my eye may see it different than yours. And, maybe you see some purple or something like that and I don't. It's different, right? Like that creates my style. And that may be why people like my style, because I can pick apart a reference or something like that. But the ability to use the tools and move the brush around, whatever the case is, I think that takes time. I mean, it takes practice no matter what it is.
Do you ever have you tested out a bunch of different types of spray brands, like spray paint cans, and do they react differently? And you found one that you prefer? Yeah,
there's, I mean, as far as these like artist brand paints go, there's really three that are worthwhile using. And there's a lot of smaller brands that graffiti guys use, but they don't necessarily stand up to the weather. They don't have as many color options, things like that. So there's basically three. And for me, the one I found that I liked, I've stuck with. And the company itself supports me. They send me paint or we have a relationship. So I've kind of stuck with them, but they've got I think it's 290 something colors in the one line of paint that I use. So it's more than enough. I understand. I know how the paint reacts in hot conditions, cold conditions, low pressure, high pressure. I just know it. And so at this point, if I were to pick up another can, you would tell in my product. You could see, maybe it's not quite as blended or is not quite as, the details are not quite as tight. I mean, I pretty much solely use one brand and one type of paint at this point for the last 6 years or so.
What would you tell a listener? Maybe they wanted to become a mural artist. I don't know. Don't do it.
It seems like a tough road to get there.
Yeah, it does seem like a tough road. I don't know. Just I'm always, or if they just wanted to get into art in general, it was just something that happened for you. It seemed like,
yeah.
I don't know what. I don't know.
Yeah,
if that's
where to start? If you really wanted to create something, what's a good place to put your endeavors in?
It's really up to that person, right? For me, the spray paint was just a natural fit. It made sense. It was, as soon as I grabbed a can, I was like, this is for me. That was my thing. I mean, if you want to create, go create. Go to Michael's, get a bunch of whatever you want, throw some stuff together. There's no right or wrong. But to be a mural artist, it sucks a lot of time. You know what I mean? It's not fun. It might seem, even people follow me on my Instagram or my Facebook, and it might seem like it's glamorous. I get to hang out with jazz players or whatever. But I've spent 200 and something nights in hotels in the last 2 years, by myself. You know what I mean?
Because you flow into different places to do jobs at.
And it's grueling. I mean, 3 a.m, I'm in some empty warehouse by myself, powers on a generator. It's miserable work. It's cool when you can do these glamorous ones that you see, the public ones that I'm showing everyone, or anything on my Instagram. That's great, but that's not really what pays my bills. The ones that pay my bills are the ones that no one ever sees, that were a nightmare that I did in Arkansas.
But why aren't you showing those on your Instagram too? I
mean, a lot of what you have to do as an artist, there's 2 types of artists mainly in my mind. There's the type of artist that repeats something over and over and over. And if you were to hire them, that's what you're going to get. You want them to do what they do. And then there's another artist like me, where I can pretty much paint anything. So I get hired to paint stuff that I wouldn't necessarily paint just because I can. And I've got bills to pay. So, if someone's going to pay me X amount of money to paint, something I wouldn't necessarily want to, I'm going to paint it, if the money's right.
Sure.
And that's a lot of what makes being a mural artist kind of shitty, is
so it's not as glamorous as it looks like.
I think that's very true for any art, any form of, a person who wants to be an artist and make money, you have to accept that probably, I would say 70% of your work is not stuff that you're going to want to show off. Yeah. It's done for someone else for a paycheck. And then that allows you to be able to create the stuff that you really love. Exactly. Which is 30% of your work.
Exactly. I mean, the percentages are different, right? I'm probably 50-50 at this point, which is great. But I don't say don't become a mural artist or an artist because it's I'm so much cooler than you and better and I could figure it out and you can't. I'm saying it because it takes a lot of it out of it, right? If you create, back when I first started, I was painting whatever I wanted just because I wanted to paint. There was no, I didn't have any pressure of expectations on me. I didn't have some corporate client paying my bills. I just painted. If you can stick to that and just enjoy it for what it is, then you're in a much better place than someone like me who was oh, I'm going to do this for a living. And now, when I have free time, I'm not painting. I'm not painting for fun anymore. I'm painting for a living, which it's not bad. I still get to paint and it's, not a negative thing, but I mean, I definitely would recommend just keeping it something that you enjoy rather than trying to make it pay your bills for you.
Absolutely. What are some of you mentioned, when you're not painting, what are some of your other hobbies and interests? I always like to find out people we bring on, what else they like to do.
I'm into cars. I've got a Nissan GTR that is about to have 1,400 wheel horsepower. So it'll be
so fast cars,
extremely fast car. Yeah. This thing, as it sits right now, it's probably faster than pretty much any car you could buy. I don't care how much money you had. So, and I drove it every day.
What's the fastest you got that thing going?
180, but it'll do the new setup I'm doing on it. It'll do 205 miles an hour at a standing half mile.
Do you plan on taking it 205? No. I was going to say, I think I was in a car once that got up to 140 and I felt like that thing was whoa, shit.
So the real fast cars, a lot of people ask that, how fast did you get it to go? So that's not what makes a car fast. What makes a car fast is how fast it gets there. Right. So if my top speed's 200 miles an hour, but I do 0 to 60 in 2 seconds, or, I did the quarter mile in 9.7 seconds at 140 miles an hour. So from a dead stop to a quarter mile away, which is 1,320 feet. So at 1,320 feet, the car is already doing 140 miles an hour. That's a very fast car. Well, the new version, like when I'm done with it, it'll do 170 miles an hour or so. So 1,320 feet, it's 170 miles an hour in like 8.2 seconds, which is just ridiculous. So yeah, that stuff's fun.
Do you actually race? Like, oh, right on. That would scare the crap out of me.
It's pretty scary, but it's a lot of fun. I mean, it's.
Would you ever get into like NASCAR racing?
No, so I typically do drag racing, which is straight lane stuff. We don't do many corners, even though like the GTR is meant to do corners. It's just not really my thing. I've always been into drag racing.
Let's, do you want to switch gears to Salt Lake City?
Let's switch gears.
We always ask, there's a few Salt Lake City related questions that we bring up on the podcast. One of them is, we all have those out of town people that come visit us and they want to check something out. We all have that place where we take them to, whether it's an area of town, some people, hike or whatever, is there something that you would recommend? Say somebody was coming for the first time this upcoming weekend. Is there something you would say, go check this out?
I mean, restaurant wise, like Billy Blanco's in Park City or Jeremy Ranch is one of my favorite restaurants. Not only because I painted it, but I love the food there.
What's the name of that one?
It's called Billy Blanco's.
Okay. So people can go check that out for some of your art. Yeah.
Yeah. So I've got art there, but it's also a car themed restaurant. So like you can get a booth and you're like literally sitting underneath a car. Like it's on a lift. It's pretty cool. Amazing food. And just like, especially in the summertime, like it's a cool atmosphere. Like they have a little amphitheater and stuff. Other than that, I mean, like I have these friends, that they have a company called V2 and they put like shows on it out at Saltaire. So like amphitheater shows at Saltaire. I love those as well. So
go check out some live music or
for sure. Like yeah. I mean, I've never been to like any of the national parks. I've never.
And dude, I'm the same
I've never
way.
experienced
I'm not like
really
a huge hiker or anything like that.
They look great online. Yeah. I like pictures of them.
Photos are great. I've never really experienced like what most people would recommend like Salt Lake is good for. Like I'm not a hiker. I don't go fishing. I don't go boating, What would you change about Salt Lake City? Is there anything you would change about the area? So much. Where do we start, right? I'm not a huge fan of like the religious influence, honestly. Like my favorite part about Vegas is I felt like an adult there. Not because I did, partake, but I could, right? So like the pot thing is big. I don't smoke pot, but like if you want to, you're an adult, go ahead. Like
go I'm on board with if you want to get a hooker.
Right. Like you can do whatever you want. Just because it's available doesn't mean that everyone's going to, but for some reason I just felt like an adult there. And I'm here and I feel like a child. It's like somebody's watching over me and smacking me on the hand if I try to, or even think about doing something. And I'm not like a party guy. Like I stick to myself, but
if that option is there, it's nice to know that it's there.
And the other thing too is like, I would like Salt Lake to be more of like a destination place, right?
Like tourists and.
Well, not just that, but like, let's say for example, and it's tough to compare to Vegas because it's Vegas, but when I was living there, it was like, there's a fight. You're like, yeah, that's in my city. Like that's happening here. People are coming here. Things happen there. And there's something about that buzz and that energy you feel knowing that things are happening in your city and not just, there's a lot of cool stuff happening in Salt Lake. But I'm talking about stuff that people care about outside of Salt Lake, right?
Sure, and makes them want to come here.
Right. So that's, something that, and like I mentioned my friends V2, like they bring these shows and they've had people from like 26 different states come to their shows in Salt Lake.
Wow.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Like that becomes part of that feeling where people want to come here because of what's happening here. And like, that's kind of what I want to do with the art and what I want to do with the vodka. And, I want to help Salt Lake be like, hey, that's where that cool vodka's at, or hey, that's where that good art's at. Or, I think there's a lot of people that are doing their part. There's a lot of really cool people here and a lot of interesting ideas. And it's a cool place to be, but hopefully it'll get a little cooler.
Yeah.
How can our listeners reach out to you? How can they connect with you, see more of your art, even hire you maybe if they want to do a mural at their place? Yeah,
so my Instagram is probably like the best place to see my work or get a hold of me. You can also go to SRILart.com. But yeah, Instagram, you can send me a message. I'm pretty responsive there. And I keep it up to date with new stuff. Like I said, the work that I want you to see, not necessarily all the work I'm doing. So
sure.
Yeah, Instagram's kind of my thing.
You have a question
I do.
that you always ask, but was there anything else before we get there that, I know there's so much we could talk about,
yeah.
But I felt like, this gave our listeners a good idea of who you are, unless there was anything that we didn't talk about that you were hoping we would talk about.
No.
But you always have a final question before we exit the show here.
I want to know if you can leave our listeners with one piece of life advice.
I think that, like, for me, I'm a firm believer in you can pretty much do whatever you set out to do. Like, I didn't have like a rich upbringing. I kind of came from nothing, and I've fulfilled a lot of my own dreams just by working hard. Like, and I know it sounds really stupid. Like, you'll hear like these sayings or these quotes, and they kind of roll off of you. But for me, the ones that seem the most obvious are the most important. So, like, really work hard. Really like stick to your like goals and have some plan, and you can make anything you want happen. So yeah, just believe in yourself.
Perfect place to end the show. Thank you so much for coming and doing the podcast. I always tell people, let's catch up down the road, bring you back on, find out what you're up to. And
totally.
Thank you. Appreciate the gifts too. These are cool.
You bet, man.
All right. Many thanks again to Shae Petersen for joining us on this episode of the podcast. You can head on over to our website at iamsaltlake.com/358 for all the links mentioned on this episode's conversation and to find out how to get in touch with them.
All right. It's the first of the month. This is when we take a moment and thank our awesome Patreon supporters. These are, our frontline listeners that are, they kick on over $1 or $2, kind of helps keep the lights on. One thing I do want to mention, we're actually in the process with 2019 ahead of us with, really just a few more weeks here in 2019. One thing we want to do is do some live video in our podcast studio, do some video. And with the help of our Patreon supporters, we're going to be able to get some new equipment, some cameras and whatnot. So if you're interested in becoming a Patreon supporter, head on over to patreon.com/IamSaltLake. Even $1, $2, it will go a long way to help support the podcast. And so let's read our list here of our awesome Patreon supporters, some people that, they're helping keep the show going. We got John Miller. We got Ryan Prince. We got Todd Bjorkland, Tim Heron, Wendy Joe Bradshaw, the Ute Daddy Lawn Process, Thelma Rother, Nicole Davison, Alex Santee, Zach Shutt, Brandon Hill from over at Mountain Standard Time Marketing, Will Dugdale, Jared Aguilar, Brittany Hemingway, Jeff Hadfield, Michael Beck, Eric Tamaro from The Mediocre Show, Jeff Hatt, Sana, TW, not sure what TW is. I'd like to meet you though. Alan Martindale, 3 Irons SLC, Nikki Line, Michelle Stevens-Williams, Dirt in Your Skirt Podcast, Margaret from over at Dirt in Your Skirt Podcast, Christopher Heiser, and Jay Chambers. That is a group of people, though. I would love to just get them all in a room together.
Have a Patreon party.
Have a Patreon party and give them all a shot of 5 Wives vodka.
Oh my gosh, that's such a good idea.
Just as a way of saying,
you guys, let's get you drunk.
For being a Patreon supporter. Every month that we go through that, the first episode of the month, we go down the list and we read all the Patreon supporters. I'm just like, wow, it blows me away that anybody cares enough about this podcast to actually support it, right?
I love it. These are good people. So thank you guys.
Yeah, thank you very much. Again, patreon.com/IamSaltLake. The link's also in the show notes for this if you can't spell Patreon, because that is a goofy name.
It's kind of a weird name.
Anyway, last couple episodes, we have been doing recommendations. These could be anything. These are kind of personal recommendations, either Christina or myself would recommend. And so this week's episode, my recommendation is Mediocre Show. It is a podcast out of Pennsylvania. I know a lot of listeners of I Am Salt Lake already listen to a Mediocre Show, but if you don't, go check it out. You can check it out in however you subscribe to podcasts, however you listen to podcasts. Just check out Mediocre Show. Eric and Frank, they're top notch.
They're hilarious.
Really, really cool show. So that's my recommendation. What is your recommendation?
So my recommendation, and this is going to be a recommendation for the rest of my life, just so you guys know, is the fanny pack. Everyone needs a fanny pack.
This happened because I was wearing a fanny pack.
It did. I know. I have to give props to Chris, you guys. Chris is the OG because when we were dating, We went to DI to look for a fanny pack for him. And I was like, this guy is so cool. So, of course, I married him for his fanny pack.
That's the only reason, right?
Well, and the cat, you know.
Well, they're so ridiculously cheap. What did you get yours for $10 on like eBay or something?
Yeah. And but they're so great. I wear it every day. I wear it everywhere. I will never use a purse again unless it's cute and I want to. I will always wear a fanny pack, though.
Very cool.
That's going to do it for this episode. Thank you again to our amazing sponsor for this episode, Five Wives Vodka. Go visit their website at fivewivesvodka.com to find out more about their delicious locally made vodka. And if you want to send us an email, you can always say hello at iamsaltlake.com. And you can send letters, packages, and birthday cards to Chris to P.O. Box 4412, Salt Lake City, Utah, 84110.
I don't think we shared that. It's my birthday this week.
I know. I just realized that. It's Chris's birthday. Send him a card.
December 6th is my birthday. I'm going to be 41 years old, Christina.
40 hot years old.
Oh, my gosh. You guys have a great week. Make sure to get out and enjoy the city and throw a snowball at your neighbor. Support local, and we're going to see you on the next episode.
And good night, Grammy.